here, I'm just looking over each piece of meat and looking for debris like hay, straw, dirt, or fur that's contaminated the meat. And you want to remove as much of that as possible so it does not affect the flavor of your meat. You also want to check the cavity, looking for any organs or remaining pieces of organs that may have been missed in the butchering process. You're also looking for little stringy bits of meat, tissue, that you will want to remove during the cleaning process. And that really white tissue is actually fat that you'll see along the stomach cavity. I choose to remove the rabbit fat as I personally don't care for the taste, but that is a personal preference. You might notice some bruising from the butchering process. This is normal. It doesn't affect the flavor. It might affect the texture if it's excessive. And as you can see here, this is a little bit of rabbit fur that I'm removing and discarding. Now I give the meat a good rinse, removing any of the debris that I noticed previously. Sometimes a paper towel works. A dry paper towel used to dab the outside or dab where the debris is to remove it. It just sticks to the dry towel. You can see this here that I'm folding back is the belly flap, and you can see the rabbit fat along the side of the stomach area. I will remove this and any little bits of stringy meat or tissue. And that tissue up in the rib cage will also be pulled out. The rabbit fat, again, is a personal preference to remove. It's not something that has to be done. But the tissue and the fat just remove easily with just a little bit of pulling. See bruising from the dispatch step where blood has pooled and clotted, typically along the neck and shoulders of the rabbit. And I just try to remove as much of this clotting as possible by rinsing it under water. As we finish up this first rabbit, we have 2 more to go. I will not show the entire process again, but we'll jump to unique things on each rabbit that you may want to take note of and look for as you are cleaning up your meat rabbit. Here I noticed what I think is either the throat or the trachea of the rabbit that was left during the butchering process. This can be removed by just gently pulling up or reaching through the ribs and pulling down, and then discarded. This part of the meat was actually sliced during the butchering process. You can either completely remove this little bit by cutting it or choose to leave it in place. Sometimes you will find fat along the top of the shoulders, and again, my personal preference is to remove it. This is a piece of a lung that will need to be discarded. Just remember to check the rib cage cavity for any missed organs or organ pieces. All of your discarded pieces can either be composted, put in the trash, or fed to your chickens. Our chickens love rabbit scraps. Now I pat down each piece of meat with a dry paper towel to absorb as much liquid as I can. And as you can see, the tray is lined with paper towel to absorb liquid that remains as the rabbit is placed in the refrigerator to rest for another 24 hours. At this point, you could freeze your rabbit whole, or you can follow along as I piece out a whole rabbit into individual pieces of meat. I recommend getting your freezer bag ready and labeled, and we will be separating these into 2 back bags. We can now, as a family of 5, we have children ages 7.5, almost 6, and 3.5. Go through about 1.5 rabbits in a meal, maybe with a couple pieces left over. But some nights 1 rabbit is not enough, and 2 rabbits is typically too much. A nice butcher knife works well. Make sure it's sharp. I've already sharpened mine. Looking at your rabbit, this is the back, the spine. This is the neck, so the head was here. You've got the back legs here, tail, and the front legs. This here is what we call the belly flap, and some people choose not to eat this. Some people turn it into jerky. Some people use it as like a bacon. We've done jerky and we like that. It's just we usually forget to get it in the dehydrator. So I've actually been using it, just using my kitchen shears and chopping it into strips and using it for like tacos or like a fajita type dish. It is a little, it has a little bit of a different texture. It's a little chewier, but it's definitely usable. The easiest part to remove are the front legs. So if you look, you have your rabbit laying on its stomach, so its spine is up. You will see the shoulder bone, or right in here. There is no bone securing this leg to the rabbit. It is all tissue or muscle. So using your knife, or your fingers, find that back portion of the front leg, so right in here, and you're going to put your knife and just slice. And slice through this little bit of tissue here. There is 1 small bone. So here's your leg. There is a small bone that comes out from I'm trying to think here. It was attached like this. So the top of the middle of the leg up here, this round part, sometimes that bone is there when we cook it and sometimes it's not. We've had our little ones get it like stuck in between their teeth. So if I see it and if I can, I usually try to pull it out before I put it in the bag. And sometimes it just breaks. Yep, it broke. And sometimes it pulls out easily. Just depends on the day. So I usually just have a corner of bits that need to get tossed to the chickens. And another pro tip, which I didn't do, is have your bag ready and opened. Oh, it is. I just didn't do that. Open wide. Okay. Now I'm going to do that other front leg. Again, you're looking for where the bone curves here, and you're just going to slice up under that bone and cut through the front like that. And again, there's that bone there. This time it's sticking out a little more, and it's so tiny. It wouldn't hurt. Like, no one would choke on it, and it usually just kind of, like if we grill it, it just becomes super brittle. But we did have that one time where it got stuck in a child's tooth. So yeah, it's a good piece of meat there. You could save the front legs. We've done it before where we've bagged up a bunch of just the front legs and cooked them as like a wing. It's just not as much meat. But yeah, it was a fun experience, and we probably will do it again. We just don't have enough rabbit at this point. Like, we need rabbit meat in our freezer, and we need like good hearty meals in the freezer right now. So now I'm just slicing off the belly flap. It just looks like this. It's thin, a little bit of fur, and I've got a bag going here of just the belly flap. So that you just kind of grab it by the flap, pull it taut, and then you're slicing right along. This is the stomach area of the rabbit. There's no contents there. This is meat. But you're running your knife here. And then as you get up towards the ribs, pull it taut again and follow the natural curve of the rib line without actually cutting into the ribs. Here's belly flap. So this meat actually like folds over the innards of the rabbit. So when Justin butchers, he dispatches, he hangs it, he skins it, and then the first thing that he does is cut through the abdomen, the cavity, that belly flap, and then cleans out the inside of the rabbit. Okay, now we're going to do the back legs. These legs have already been popped, probably in the butchering process, but if your rabbit is still relatively in this position, but the legs aren't splayed like that, you would want to just hold the backbone and bend this leg, and you'll hear it pop, and that would actually be taking it to like just dislocating that leg. Maybe in another one I can show that process. And you're going to take your knife, follow the tail. It's just tissue there. And then up here, you're going to cut and just follow the curve of the leg. This one was a relatively easy one. Relatively clean cut. Sometimes I miss my mark, and the hip bone runs right here, and I don't quite cut in the right spot, and so then I've actually like cut this bone away from the leg, which you can do. And sometimes I actually even just completely remove this little hip bone, and I'll do that now. You just kind of feel and see if I can. Nope, it's not gonna want to come out. I don't want to like destroy my meat either. Oh, don't want to. Yep, there it goes. Okay. So this is just kind of like the hip bone. You can see where like the ball joint of the leg sits in there. I have a pile of bones going that I use to make bone broth. So there is your back leg. Again, you don't have to remove that bone. Sometimes I do because it's like half hanging out. But it actually helps the meat of the leg kind of stay more firm, especially if you're going to be grilling it. Just a personal preference. If you would want that removed. Okay, let's do this other back leg here. Again, it's already been popped. And so I just have to run my knife through here. So this time around, the back legs are coming off just as easily as the front legs. That's not always the case. So here's actually an example where the hip bone, oh, maybe not. It's kind of still attached to this stomach meat here. So I just have to run it right there. But it is kind of sticking out. So this would be a case where I might actually just remove it completely. But we're going to leave it in, because it just keeps this meat here more firm. Okay. To me, these are the two most hardest cuts that we're going to be doing. So this is the rib cage. You can see the ribs in there. All of the inner organs have been removed. You're going to feel along the ribs and look for the last rib at the bottom. And it's right in here. You can feel it. And then take your knife and run it in between that rib and the spine, kind of at an angle. And do the same thing on the other side. So run your finger down, feel that last bone, rib bone, and take your knife and slice up at an angle. There are my two cuts. Now, this may be gross if you don't like working with meat and things. You're going to, this is the stomach, this is the back. You're going to bend it with the back up, I guess. And it's going to pop or snap. It might sound a little gross. I'm going to hold it up to the camera so that you can hopefully actually pick up the sound so you know what you're looking for. So right now we're breaking that spine, and then we're going to cut through the remaining tissue. Hear that snap? And then I usually like to pull it just a little bit more. And then turn it over. You can see where it broke. And then just get your knife and cut. Cutting board would probably be easier. It would be less slippery. I just like to contain as much of the liquid as possible and not get it all over my counter. And you just kind of have to work it and get your own groove to cut through it. It does take a little bit of effort, but now you've removed the ribs.
I hope that this has been helpful and informative. I did forget to show how to remove the tailbone from the backbone on the first rabbit. I have 2 more rabbits to piece out, and I do hope that you will stick with me and learn alongside me.
Just gonna slice. Now with the cervical dislocation, I think is what we call it for the way we dispatch, it is said to be the quickest kill for the animal, but it does have a tendency to bruise the meat. You can see here, this is like some bruising that happened. The blood can sometimes pool up around the shoulders, and sometimes it will even go down into like the back a little bit. This round of butchering in my opinion, I've seen the least amount of bruising that we've ever had. So I'm not sure if Justin did something a little bit different. There are other ways to dispatch. Justin's tried a pellet gun before, and that did not go well. The animal suffered, so we've gone back to this way because it's just the quickest method. So here, this is where some of the blood pooled, and when we freeze and then thaw, it will take on a darker color. So I'm gonna cut off this piece here just to clean it up a bit. It doesn't necessarily change the flavor, and it all depends on how you cook the meat as well. Grilling it would hide that bruising because you get the browning or the charring from the grill. And there's that bone right in there. Stick it to me. It's a little bit of fur. So, commercial breed rabbits for meat, Californians and New Zealand's, the preferred fur color is white because you are less likely to see it on your meat. And the governing authorities over butchering and meat selling, they allow for a certain percentage of fur on the meat product. So most commercial butchers and meat processors prefer a white furred animal or feathered. So for chickens, like the most common chicken is the Cornish cross. They're a white feather because you're less likely to notice those white feathers on the meat. Okay, so this leg has been popped, dislocated already, so I'm just gonna remove it, and it looks like the other one will need to be popped, so I will show you how that works. That was a nice clean cut. That's a nice piece of meat right there. All right, this last leg, I think we do need to pop it, so let's see. Maybe a little, not much. All right, I'm looking for that hip bone. All right, so I'm just gonna cut up. It's hard to show. Cut right here along the tail. Our first few, I don't know, I guess experiences eating rabbit, it did have just a funny taste. So pause that story. Let me show you what's going on here. I started cutting too low on this leg. So now, so you can put it back together here. The way my knife was angling, I actually started cutting past the hip. So I was cutting, my knife was going down in here where the hip is actually up here. So this is one of those cases where I would probably end up just pulling the hip bone out off the leg, but I've caught it early enough, so I'm going to actually readjust my knife position and cut up here to keep that bone in place. You can see now it's sticking out a bit, but okay, so back to what I was saying. Our first experiences with rabbit, it had just an aftertaste, and so we get on Facebook and our meat rabbit groups and ask, and there's some glands along like the legs and tail area, and they recommended like cutting those out. I don't know if he's actually ever seen them, but so he just kind of, when he butchers the rabbit, he kind of, you can see he cuts up further in to the leg area along the tail in an effort to remove those glands. And since he's been doing that consistently, the meat does have just a better flavor overall. Another thing that has improved the flavor of our meat, I think, and this has really been since we moved to Arkansas and bought a large cooler, like a giant cooler from Sam's Club, is using ice, putting the rabbits on ice immediately after they're butchered. In Michigan, we would just fill a tub or a tote with cold water and soak them and let them soak maybe for 24 hours. But I think ice is making a difference. It's cooling them a lot quicker.
and then taking them out of the ice and rinsing them and patting them dry a bit, and then letting them sit in the fridge for another 24 hours. We would still, after soaking them, have them sit in the fridge in Michigan, but I think there's something about using the ice that just, I don't know, the meat just has been tasting a lot better. Could be that we're also using a different brand of feed because we couldn't get the same feed here. So maybe that's making the difference in the flavor as well. A couple different factors. All right, so now I'm removing that belly flap. I'm just following along the ribs. Nice piece there. That'd be like, I don't know, good piece to like fry up as like a bacon type. Okay, now we're going to remove the ribs. So look for that last rib bone. Make sure there's not one hiding so it's sticking out here. And run your knife up towards the ribs. Flip your meat. Again, find that bottom rib bone and slice just below it going up. And then again, we have to bend the rabbit back this way. It's a lower cut. I wonder if I missed a rib. See the difference in where I cut? There could actually be a rib hiding in on that side. Okay, and then we're just gonna pop it. And then go back to where we were cutting. Actually, I don't know what I did on this one, but we're just gonna kind of try to clean it up. It's kind of a messy cut. And like I said in the beginning, it's not always the same. So you can see this is a rib bone here and this is a rib bone here. It's just kind of holding on. I think it broke up. I think the spine part broke higher up than that last rib. It's just par for the course. It doesn't always cut quite the way you want it. And I am by no means a professional butcher. Okay, now we need to remove that tail. We're going to pop it again. And that time it went further up in here. I don't really want it way up there, but so it broke here. You can kind of see where the meat gives a little bit. I'm just going to place my knife there now and put some pressure down. It's slippery. Sometimes a little bit of sawing helps. This is by far my least favorite part, is getting the tail off. And it broke. So now I'll just put my knife right in there and it should cut through. Yep. Whew. Okay. And there's that. Here's a little bit of fat here. I'm just going to remove that. I do not like the taste of rabbit fat, and I hear it seems to be a popular or a common thing. People not liking the taste of rabbit fat. Rabbits are generally very lean, but we do have, like, these are domestically raised, so they do have more fat on than what a wild rabbit would. I have a bag in my freezer of rabbit fat that I saved to like maybe render, or we've talked about grinding rabbit meat, so I thought we could grind it in, but I just don't like the flavor when I get little bits of it, and so I don't think we're going to do that. I think I'm just gonna eventually toss it. There's that front leg. You can see a little bit of blood pooling, clotting there.
letting your meat rest in the freezer or on ice before processing it like this, or even putting it in the freezer, does lend to a more tender meat. And that's true for really any meat or animal that you butcher. All right, for that shoulder. The reason letting it rest is it allows the rigor mortis to kind of subside a bit, and rigor mortis is triggered by a hormone that's released upon death, and so allowing that to kind of dissipate is what changes the tenderness of the meat. There's still some clotting there, but that's fine. And there's that bone. I really wish I knew what purpose this tiny little bone served. Okay. For that. And there's some belly flap that's attached there, but we're just gonna, I wanna flip along the tail. Reason this one feels more awkward to me. Did I miss the bone? What did I do? Okay. A little bit of fur. Past 2 cuts. You can see this one, how there's more red down here. This is bruising from the dispatch. It does seem like more bruising has shown up since I cleaned them last night. Okay, and we're gonna bend it and pop it. That was an easy one. And now the tail. That was a good snap. So I'm just gonna try twisting it. Ooh. Nope. Gotta cut it. No shortcuts. Good. Come on. There. All right. 3 rabbits. 2 meals for our family. And maybe